Okay, I think we're good now. Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate this. I know we kind of put this together for you last minute, but I wanted to welcome you. My name is Melanie Leone. I am a mom of 3. I live here in Hudson. I'm a former classroom teacher with an administration degree, and I stumbled into Moms for Liberty in the end of June, kind of by accident. Moms for Liberty is a nonpartisan group. Our whole goal is to make sure that we just back individuals who stand for liberty, stand for parent choice, stand for transparency, and stand for just doing what their voters ask them to do. So that's kind of what we stand for in a nutshell. We have about 350 members. We are across Summit County, so we're growing crazy fast. A little too fast for us to keep up with. But we're really excited to be here tonight to meet all of the candidates that are here tonight. We did invite all of them, but it was pretty last minute, so of course conflicts, arose. But we're happy to have those of us who are here. So how this is going to work is we are going to have our MC over here. This is Amanda Coker, and she is actually all the way from
New Franklin.
Okay, I was
on the south side of Summit.
So she's all the way on that side. We're sharing the duties on each side of the county, which is a lot of fun. So we're new friends. We have just met in the last few months, and she's really been a huge help to get this organization off the ground. So that's who we are in a nutshell. So this is how it's going to work. All of the candidates gave us 2 questions in a sealed envelope. I have not seen them. Amanda has not seen them. And she's just going to read a question. Each candidate gets 2 minutes to answer that question. I'll give them a 30-second warning card, and we're done. After we're all done with the questions, then they'll mingle, chat with you guys. If you have any personal questions you want to kind of ask them, by all means, get to know them a little more. And that's all we got. Any questions? Perfect. All righty, let's get started. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's go.
All right. Four envelopes.
Do we do the intros first?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We did not intro you. We should probably tell you who you are. That's kind of important. Let's start all the way at the end and go all the way down. Just give us a quick spiel who you are.
So good evening to the Moms for Liberty members and guests. Thank you for the opportunity to share about myself and with the broader community. I'm a husband to the lovely Leslie. I'm a father to 3 children in Hudson schools. And I have a bachelor's in chemistry, an MBA, and a master's in strategic studies with a focus in cyberspace operations. I've been a resident of Hudson for 10 years, which has been enough time for me to develop a deep appreciation for this community. On the business side, I've worked in Fortune 150 companies in numerous roles since I left active duty in the Marine Corps in 2005. Most recently in major project management and global transformations, managing large budgets across a diverse group of interests and people to deliver results for the organization. I've also been a Marine officer for over 20 years, first as a finance officer and then as a civil affairs officer, where I was focused on infrastructure, economics, and I think we have one more guest.
Holding me a seat, that's lovely.
I held it for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, sir. Here, put that in the path. Ooh. Perfect. Where do you want this chair? Use it over there. Good.
All right. So being a Marine officer, I was successfully deployed multiple times to regions divided by race, religion, and socioeconomic disparity. My goal has been to reinforce stability and to emphasize the role that the government has and its connection to the people that they serve. As I've walked Hudson and met hundreds of people here in the city, I've been asked many times why I decided to run for council, and now, while I'm not a professional politician, the number and variety of residents that asked me to do this brought me to step forward and serve. And while I prefer to serve in less public ways, in our current climate, I feel that I will contribute civility, a level-headed approach, and mature leadership to unifying the community and enabling progress on basic infrastructure, phase 2, and other similar initiatives. The bottom line is that I love this community and our people. I've benefited from this community in particular, and I want to pay that forward. I bring more skills and experience than political narrative, and I offer a civil approach and professional experience to this city and our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, good evening. My name is Karen Heater, and thank you all for attending tonight, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about ourselves and what we hope to accomplish should we get elected. I moved to Hudson in the 1970s, and I had a wonderful childhood. I attended schools from kindergarten through 12th grade. I grew up on Elm Street, right close to downtown. So I delivered, I rode my bike all over town. I delivered the Akron Beacon Journal to residents all over town. And when I was old enough to get a real job, I worked at Saywell's Drugstore. Hopefully some of you remember Saywell's. I have fond memories of growing up here, and that's one of the reasons that I decided I wanted to pursue running for city council. After high school, I attended Grove City College, graduating with a degree in mechanical engineering. I started my career with BP Oil in downtown Cleveland, and over the course of the next 30 years, I've had just a variety of different engineering roles, including design, client management, local, federal, state permitting. I have a lot of experience that I think translates into what we need as a role in city council. I'm married to Dave, and I have 3 children. My youngest is a senior in high school, so maybe that's another reason I'll be empty nesting next year. I'm a little sad about that. So, over the last several months during my campaign, I too have been listening to residents, and I've been asked many times, why are you running for office? And the simple answer is, as an engineer, I have value to add as a city council representative. I have extensive experience with many of the facets of city operations, fiscal and budget management, design and operation of water and sewer utilities, management and allocation of staffing, and communications. My position requires that I be very transparent with my clients, just as we need to be transparent with residents. But there's much more to my answer. And my childhood experience was really iconic, and Hudson was safe, quiet, and a friendly community. And I realize we can't keep Hudson in that time bottle, but I want to make sure that as we grow organically in a way that maintains our heritage and our small town character. So I often ask residents when I meet with them, why did you move to Hudson? And their answers are typically for the small town character, the historic downtown area, or for the school system. Our residents do not want to overdevelop the downtown area in ways that degrade the historic feel of downtown. We can allow development of the remaining properties, but we need to do so in a way that enhances our downtown and is a smooth transition from the surrounding area, supports our downtown merchants, and provides for organic growth. And right now we're at kind of a critical point with this phase 2 development. And again, I believe that we need folks on city council who understand how we need to meet the needs of the residents and also preserve and maintain that character. So in closing, as an elected body, city council members have a responsibility to work collaboratively and make decisions in a fiscally responsible manner that are in the best interest of our residents. And over the last year, I've observed on more than one occasion city council members working independently and submitting proposals to the rest of council body for approval that involve spending taxpayer money without financial analysis or research or community input. In one case, this would have involved a property tax levy. This is not how a city council body should work. As your city council representative, I will promote collaboration with city council members and city staff, transparency with our residents, and responsible financial management. Thank you.
My name is Greg Janik. I've lived in Hudson, Ohio since 1974, and first and foremost, I want to thank my colleagues up here in the diocese. It's not an easy arena to walk into, as we all know. I've had the good fortune of going through the Hudson school systems, seeing our community grow from a small community as to where we are here in 2021. Council gave me the opportunity to serve as our member of Planning Commission as well as our chair. I served on our recycling committee. I served the community on an ad hoc basis with fellow citizens as we looked at the issue of white-tailed deer in our town. And I served as one of the original members of the recycling committee and our ad hoc television committee. Well, we don't have television anymore. But I've seen our community grow in a lot of ways. I had the good fortune to work closely with the Development Office on our then brand new land use code. And I certainly have seen that thing change over the last 20 years since we put that thing in place. I've seen the environmental concerns of our community as recognized by money that taxpayers have spent on studies that identified our District 6 area out towards Route 303 and Route 8 as a very integral part of our watershed and where we get our wellheads. But yet, in our lack of infinite wisdom, I've seen that area been developed to the point where we once again look at giant warehouses and an outdoor developer from Atlanta that brought homes out on the Boston Mills area. To anybody that lives there, I apologize. But I think that that's, doesn't fit with the gist of our community and where we are now in 2021. I've been going door to door. I haven't been to anybody's door in this house yet, but I'm trying to run an old school campaign. I don't go online. I spent pretend signs, and that's it. What I have to say is, I think, important, and that Phase 2 is a vitally important portion right now. Conversation with our citizens. We've never once looked at our community, our population, our need for a community center, a senior citizen center. I look at our downtown historic district and I see an opportunity to extend what we already have on Phase 2. I'm not quite sure if a 40,000 square foot building is the anchor for our downtown. I think we have some legitimate opportunity to extend our park systems, a legitimate recycling center, something that makes sense, again, back to the senior citizens community center, that maybe ties in an outdoor amphitheater, that maybe legitimizes our educational system in town, from our public schools to our Western Reserve Academy, and the education that we could bring to the rest of the world. We have a really good opportunity in Hudson to set an example. But I think most importantly, right now, it's vitally important that our citizens get heard for the first time in a long time. I'd like to see us have an ongoing monthly citizen action council get together where we as taxpayers have a say in what's being said about where money's being spent. We don't have a lot of give and take at the council right now when it comes to workshops. I'd like to see that change in a charter. I'd like to see that change as far as the way we do business in this town. I think we all have a voice in it, and I'd like to be a voice for that. And I think I bring some experience with understanding what we've done. I'm an ex-Peace Corps volunteer. I play music, I do radio. If you ever listen to 91.5 WKHR, you can listen to me there. It's a little plug, I'm sorry, but music does soothe the savage beast in all of us, and we've got some great opportunity in this town to do some great things as we move forward, I think for the first time for all of us. So thank you for your time.
I'm Sarah Norman, and my credentials are listed on a lot of different places, so I sort of wanted to go through about 2 minutes of roughly chronological life experiences and what that translates into that I would bring to the job as the at-large council representative. I majored in history and art, and then I went to law school. So I see bigger than just the localized concerns of a little town in the corner of Ohio. I see a bigger picture of things and how our decisions affect other things. I earned a graduate certificate in historic preservation, and I had the courage to change my career based on the job opportunities that I realized I was better suited for the law than I was for architecture. I passed 2 back-to-back bar exams because I needed to cover my bases for where I might be able to get a job. I'm a prudent and thoughtful person who is not afraid to put extra effort in today to ensure future opportunities. I served as a deputy county prosecutor trying child abusers. I already have had the most difficult conversation of my life, and it was not about politics. I opened my own law practice and served preservation clients in 3 states. I have a creative mindset because I had to build that practice and that entire discipline of the legal practice on my own. I have that creative spark that allows me to visualize multiple options on any given issue, and I know how to analyze things. I have a great family. My husband and I have 4 children, and I do believe you can test the quality of a tree by checking out its fruit. My children know how to advocate for themselves and for others. They do good things. 3 of them are Eagle Scouts, and they always vote. I re-entered the workforce when it was helpful to my family, and I am proud to make Ohio's Sunshine Law very real on a daily basis. I'm very proud of this, I earned perfect job performance reviews at an office that has a policy not to issue perfect job performance reviews. 5 years in a row, I have managed to make that happen. But I've also led a very abundant life that gives me a very diverse background as far as my life experiences go. I've traveled a lot, I've been involved in athletic activities, in artistic activities, and this is what I have come to as a city council representative. I stand for 4 things. I stood for these 4 things last year. The details this year have changed a little bit that we're talking about in this framework, but I stand for transparent government. I stand for infrastructure equity. I stand for responsible spending, and I stand for thoughtful development of this town. All of this is what I bring in wisdom and experience to the job of City Council at Large. So I hope you'll look me up on norman4hudson.com, or check out when Facebook goes back up, because I guess it went down today. When it goes back up, check out my Friends for Sarah G. Norman campaign page. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Todd Zedak, and I want to thank you for inviting all of us to share our visions for the future of our town. I'm a lifetime resident of Hudson who cares deeply. I have no political ambitions, aspirations, or goals except to preserve what needs to be preserved and to grow and change that which needs to grow and change in our town. I'm a reasonable, rational, civil, and thoughtful person. I'm creative, and I'm a doer. I come into office with a real plan for making things happen. On Phase 2, on the Youth Development Center, on velocity broadband, on community rights versus states' rights, specifically as they relate to zoning. I'm a lifetime and active member of the First Congregational Church, coached Little League baseball and soccer. I was a member of Hudson Kiwanis. I helped to create, found, and actively run a COVID-related charity based around the idea of neighbor helping neighbor. I've hosted public sessions on political civility. A key factor in the success of these sessions was establishment of our points of commonality. Identify that which we agree upon first. Another technique that we utilized was the rule that before you could speak, you needed to repeat what the previous speaker said. And the previous speaker had to agree that what they heard you say was what they said. Really slows and improves the conversation. I hope this session proves to be helpful in helping you decide whom among us seems best suited to guide our future. I certainly hope to be among the 3 that earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with questions. Like I said, each candidate gave 2 questions in their envelopes. Amanda's going to read the question. You'll each get 2 minutes to answer that question. I'll give you a white 30-second card so you know when your time is coming to a close. And that's how we're going to keep it. Pretty simple.
Sounds good.
Are we ready? All right, Amanda, you're up.
All right. How do you feel about one question from each envelope?
Yeah, that's
to
fine.
Start.
That's fine.
Just for
Yep.
time.
Yep, in fairness, that sounds good.
Perfect. I won't even pick, I'll just do the top question, or should we,
Number 1.
number 1.
Okay.
And then if we go through them, we'll go to number 2. Okay. No, let's see the question. Ooh, it's something to see. An envelope this time. Tricky. This is a 2-part question.
Oh, yeah. Start with a bang.
Okay, what is the job that brought you the most joy and why? What job best prepared you to serve on council and why?
So I think the 2-part question comes down into one answer for me. It has been my career as a civil affairs officer, and I think there are many jobs across that, but it's engaging the community, developing realistic plans that have an effect in the community to both bring stability and a better life for the people that you're working with. And generally because people are divided, it's finding ways to navigate those diverse groups of people to get them excited about something that brings them together. Now, why I believe this best prepares me for a position on council is the professional skills and experiences. Having worked in a number of cities, nations, different environments, being able to appreciate what both the physical environment provide as challenge and opportunity, as well as the dynamic groups of people that you have to work with, provide both challenge and opportunity if we tap into that segment. I think that's just a perfect alignment for the role in the city council, and that is essentially why I agreed to do this and when I sought this position, because I think we could use some of that community healing, but at the same time we could benefit from good infrastructure plans. I mean, that go from roads and stormwater mitigation, all the way up to our power challenges upcoming and how we're going to answer those. I think we have some short-term needs and some short-term challenges that we must address now, phase 2 being a good example. But I think it would be short-sighted to think that all the answers that we need to produce are going to come in the next year or two. I think there are challenges out there as a community we're going to have that we have not yet seen. And putting the right people in council that have the professional skills and experience that know how to navigate those waters is setting ourselves up for success. So that's why I've enjoyed that career in particular, and I think that it has aligned well with the skills necessary to do this job.
Okay, so two-sided question or two-stage.
I can read it again.
Oh, no, I'm good. No,
Okay.
thank you. I'm good. I'd have to say that my current job has definitely been the most fulfilling, and maybe it's because, you know, you start out of college and your first job is always exciting. It's you know, your first real venture into the real world, and it's always great, but you know, you progress throughout your career, and you slowly, you know, get more skills, and you slowly get more responsibilities, and through my career path, you know, I started as a design engineer and designed underground storage tank systems for the retail stations for BP Oil. And from there I progressed and moved on to environmental consulting and managed to work on a Superfund site, which was actually, it was fascinating, and you know, it's just applied engineering to help clean up soil and groundwater. And from there I've progressed to where I am now, where I manage a team of 40 people implementing programs for investor-owned utilities. And you know, it involves, I have to manage a staff of technical folks and administrative folks and outreach folks and marketing, and it's just very satisfying because I have the opportunity to kind of, you know, coordinate all of these different skill sets. But at the same time, I'm responsible for ensuring that I, you know, work with my client, and I'm satisfying what my client wants. So, similar to city council, you know, we look at running a city, there's a lot of different facets that go into that city operation, very similar to kind of running a large-scale program. Fiscal management, understanding, you know, large-scale projects, coordinating staff, but ultimately satisfying the client, which is the residents. So most importantly, again, listening to residents. What do we want? What's our common vision for Hudson? Where do we want to go? And then having the ability to look forward and have that forward-thinking vision and then bring it all together.
I think my life is still going on. I think my experiences of life haven't stopped. I'm fortunate enough to have been brought up in an educational background with my parents. I think that my experiences through Hudson and my opportunity to serve this community at an early age, like my first opportunity for this community was in my 30s, and it seems like just yesterday, but that was some time ago. But I think what I've understood about Hudson is that we sometimes operate cyclically. There's times when we're very involved as a citizenry with what's going on in our communities, and then we go through these ebbs and flows. And my experiences through these last 25 years, it's been a few years since I've been serving the community, but by my own choice. To come back now, I think is at this time where I really feel, as we look at where we sit at this time right now, what we've accomplished so far developmentally in this community, where we have gotten with the school systems that we have in this town. The big question that I've been asking everybody at this, we're going to hear it tonight, I'm going to say it right now, is like, when are we big enough as a community? And I keep coming back to this and bringing that to this, and how do we get our council and our development office focused on listening to what we hear and what we hear when we all talk to you, because up to this point it doesn't seem that a lot of those have been answered. So I heard a comment made something about someone sensing some ununified council at this time or whatnot. Maybe that's the case. If anything, I think my spirit of what I've been involved with all through college, all through Peace Corps, all through my volunteering, my every week on a microphone, my communication, my confidence to speak with folks and bring folks together. I really hope that we can get chartered up, if we could, finally once and for all, we recognize our responsibilities to you folks and giving you that opportunity to really be part of our government again. And for me, that's the most important thing for my coming onto council, is to bring you folks with me as well.
Thank you.
So a job that brought me joy, no two ways about it. It was when I was children's ministries director at my church. I had the reputation as the only staff member ever to skip into the copying room because I was singing, I love my job, I love my job. And really what I loved about that was an opportunity to work with children who are a very forgiving audience, because you can turn a cardboard box into a magic place with just a little bit of glue and glitter, and they think you're wonderful. And so it was a very satisfying job and really something that I felt like I excelled at and I really enjoyed. But probably the best job that has prepared me to serve on city council is the job I have right now. I'm a document support staff personnel for the Cuyahoga Land Bank. And that job didn't exist until I came along, and it was with great trepidation that the president even hired me, because one of his directors said, we really have to deal with our paper. And that was when our organization only owned about 3,600 properties. We are 200 properties away from 17,000. So if you want to know if I've ever done more than 10,000 of something in my life, I have made more than 10,000 property folders. But what that translates into is not just putting paper away, because document management is more than that. It's about creating systems. So creating systems that serve the needs of all of the departments in my company, but of making sure that they're aware of what our time schedule, what our statutory requirements are, of making sure that all 40 people are on the same page for making sure the Sunshine Law about records, public records requests is being, upheld within our organization. So those are my answers.
Thank you. Can you read it again?
Oh, no.
Right.
I have been a ski instructor for over 40 years. I started teaching in Boston Mills, right down the road. And I became fully certified about 25 years ago, which if you're not a skier, means nothing, but if you are, it's kind of a big deal. And I think I'll cheat and say that job satisfies both of these questions for me. I love to ski and I love to teach. And there are 4 types of learners, and so as you're teaching someone how to do a skill in an environment that they're uncomfortable with, you not only have to figure out what they can and can't do, but you have to figure out how they communicate, what works for them. Some people need a lot of words. Some people need a picture. Some people need a demonstration. And I found that in communicating with my fellow citizens, with my fellow candidates, that requires a high degree of flexibility in how you deliver your message. It doesn't mean your message is flexible, but it does mean that the way you convey that and work with that is important. And you also have to be open to the idea that someone may teach you something, not often, but once in a while, they open your eyes to something that you hadn't thought of before. And so that would be my answer to that question.
We're going to envelope 2, and what if we
Go-
just
let's
walk
just
down
second.
the line?
Yep.
Okay, we're on the same.
No, I think Chris should answer.
And then he's got some time now, Again, see, ooh, this one's fancy. It's got silver. 2 different cards.
There's no glitter in that, is there?
I would leave. I can't deal with
I'll
it.
let you shred it.
Top one, first question. As a city council representative, your responsibility is to oversee the management and operations of city government. What skills do you bring that add value to that role?
Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, I am a licensed professional engineer with 30 years of experience, and so I have many of the skills needed, in this position. I think we've kind of forgotten that, city council is responsible for overseeing city staff and the city government and the city operations. You know, it's a big responsibility, and it does require you to have some skills, at least insights into the operations. You know, my background, I've done a lot of engineering design. I've had to deal with different types of staff. I've managed large multi-million-dollar contracts over multiple years. I understand how to, again, be financially responsible and manage projects under budget, ahead of schedule. You know, as an engineer, we tend to like to solve problems, and we like to look for creative ways to solve problems. And it seems like lately we have a few of those coming up in Hudson with some of the things like velocity broadband and Hudson Public Power. Chris mentioned some of the concerns with that. So, you know, I think again, it does, recently we seem to have had this position that, you know, it's more about power as opposed to working for the people. And so, you know, my position going in is I represent residents. I'm there to bring my skills and add value to that position using my skill set. And I'm not in it for a popularity contest. You know, it's not easy, but I want to give it my all because I care about this town and I care about the future. So that's my answer.
I would say that for our responsibility to the community, it's our responsibility to each other as we sit as fellow council people. Each time we get together, each time we make a decision for this town. I think for my purpose to come to this decision to come to council is because of my strong belief in my communication skills, but more importantly, my listening skills. We haven't done a lot of listening in this town in a long time. We listen to a lot of outside opportunities that come to us, but our true inside information somewhat gets ignored. I've seen it happen from within, with the work that we did wonderfully on our land code that sits in the position that it is today. I look at how we use that opportunity to put in place this community and a wonderful opportunity so that when a developer came into this town, he or she knew what they were coming to do when they came to look at our zoning code and sat with our staff and sat with our planning commission at that point before they even sat in front of our town. But we took that step out of our land code as an industrial guidelines committee meeting level before development even happened. So that when they did come, they had all their ducks in line. I'd like to first and foremost return that to our review process for development in this town. I think that that's a very important aspect. And I think that that's working within our staff. It's important that they recognize that that's an important thing. When they bring a plat, when they put something in front of us from a development standpoint, let's have all the information right there. So, my bottom line is I just think that as a communicator and a listener, it starts with working with my fellow 6 other council people on board. So, that's what I'd like to say.
The specific skill sets that I would bring on this first would be analysis. I have the ability to not just read something and say, that sounds good, but to look every word up. The best example I can give you is that I spent the summer of 2018 reading through our entire land development code with a red pen and cross-checking all of the definitions and making sure that when it says it was a particular thing, that in fact, that's what it actually said. Another skill that I bring is that of mediation. And mediation is not just about deal brokering, but begins with listening to people sometimes who have conflicting ideas. I gained this skill when I worked during law school at the City of Cleveland Prosecutor's Office as a mediator, and brought that skill and actually really honed it on my children. And they will tell you my method of dispute resolution within the household was time consuming and was to be avoided because Mom was thorough, listening to both sides, asking hard questions about who needed to compromise and what the outcome needed to be. I would call another skill that I have forecasting. Now, I'm not a prognosticator and I don't, read tea leaves or anything like that, but I have the kind of forward-thinking skills to be able to say, what are the natural consequences of this choice that we make? And how, are we prepared to deal with that? Do we need to do anything special in order to account for what the law of unintended consequences is going to deliver to us? My skill in the law allows me to ask hard questions. I'm kind of tired of some of the experts and people who have been hired as outside vendors for our city recently. They haven't been asked hard questions, and then we end up holding the bag when they aren't able to follow through for us. And follow through is my last skill, because it's not enough to just pass a law or a policy. You really need to look at the backside too and assess whether you have succeeded in doing the thing you set out to do.
Hudson has a long-standing tradition of a weak mayor and a strong city manager, hired as a professional manager of the city staff. City council directs the activities of the city manager, and the city manager directs the activities of the staff. Now, sometimes there's a very clear and direct line right through the city manager to the staff person, but nevertheless, that's the way everything is organized. So I feel quite strongly that there have been, has not necessarily been as clear a management role from council directing the activities of the city manager. That's been a little perhaps cozier than I might think it ought to be. However, the city council, in my understanding of things, is not running the city staff government. They manage the city manager manages down through the rest of the staff. So I would like to see council be more clear and more direct and perhaps a little more separated from the city manager, so that that message is abundantly clear and actions and directions are not coming up from the city manager, but instead are flowing down from your elected representatives.
I think that's actually a good segue, and I'll use my third point to start with the first one. Awesome.
Yeah, 31.
The council providing guidance and direction to the strong city manager, very important. I think there's another piece that comes to my mind from past experience, which is staff coordination, and that is down to communication and the way that you interact with members of staff that you don't necessarily directly have a relationship to or a reporting structure. And it becomes that grease in the machine. I think, as Todd opened to, but I really want to dig into, is your ability, and I think having worked on many staffs up to civil staffs with Department of State, all the way over to military staffs and 3-star general staffs, the ability to integrate in those complex organizations, logistics, information, communication, how it all comes together to give us a product, and that product is to benefit our city, right? Leverage the resources effectively in a fiscally responsible way so that we deliver results without wasting time or resources. So I hit first staff coordination. I think second, and one of the big skills that's necessary, is to be able to see the big picture and where we want to go. And I know we've talked a bit about the comprehensive development plan being updated, but it really is setting that vision for the future and then being able to chunk the work behind it that will deliver us the big picture connected to the little things we do day to day in our projects and our plans. And finally, a skill that I think essential in being able to help integrate with the staff is going to be interpersonal communication. And that comes to the staff work, but it also comes, as has been mentioned, in how we work with each other as professionals in a civil way for the good of the people. That's all I have.
Thank you. We're done. 3 more envelopes. Anybody need a quick break, anything?
Good,
Doesn't
keep
it?
going,
Okay.
just truck it through.
Another sealed envelope. This is more my
I
style.
know.
My notebook paper.
I can't remember what it is.
Mine would be like on the back of my like Google Bill or something. Probably. Can we develop council legislation pertaining to the number of trash haulers, their days and hours of operation, and in some cases in town, the size and weight of the trucks? So I'm gonna read it again. Can we develop council legislation pertaining to the number of trash haulers, their days and hours of operation, and in some cases in town, the size and weight of their trucks? I put that
That's
at.
me, right?
Yep, that's you.
Yes, sir.
So, interesting question, because I've actually had conversation at the farmers markets with folks just about this notion. I'm an early riser. I put in about 4 to 5 miles each morning on our little streets walking. And it just surprises me, just about every morning, the number of trucks that are in our town. And the number of haulers that are in our town. And I think some of the conversations that I heard from residents is just the size of these trucks. And obviously, we've talked about it, each and every one of us tonight. We've got 35-year-old potholes in this town. And we need to shore those potholes up. These trucks certainly don't add to helping that one bit. We've got some pretty small, cute streets in this town that really can't take the weight of some of these trucks if you look at them. There's a lot of them. So I would find it interesting if we could do something. I know that other communities have limited hours and given days of operation for haulers to be in town. And I think that the hours of operation are certainly one that should be taken into consideration. We're a pretty quiet town. It's pretty quiet at 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning. But those trucks certainly do generate a lot of noise in town. And I'm just wondering if there would be an opportunity for council to look at maybe what other communities are doing on this issue. I think it's important for us.
So all of my answers about trash hauling were formed with the 5 years that my husband and I lived in Shaker Heights. Shaker Heights has very high taxes, and at the time we had gold-plated city services. I didn't have to take my trash out to the front. They had a little busy bee cart that drove out in the back and picked up my trash in the backyard and drove it out to some big truck parked somewhere else once the little busy bee cart was filled, and that's how our trash got hauled. Now I understand they've changed that system to some degree, and a lot of the effort to make that the system in Shaker Heights was about people not wanting those unsightly garbage cans on the street at all. All right, well, when I come to Hudson, I had no complaints about the old system of collecting trash, but I noticed a distinct difference in the pleasantness of the street once we went to the 4-quadrant system, which divided the city into 4 parts and made the trash collection day on a specific date of the week, and everyone went and did it at that time. Didn't matter who the hauler was. Working backwards on the question, though, I think we probably are going to be preempted related to size and weight. As far as state regulations go, there are a lot of EPA rules related to trash haulers. I would want to do my research on that before I said with certainty that the city was able to legislate on size and weight. Days and hours we have sort of already restricted. I think that's been successful. I think the real question is about the number. There are a lot of people who are very uncomfortable with giving up the choice about who picks up their trash. And I think the solution is not necessarily to commit permanently to a trash hauler, but to a contract of a period of time. If we said, for example, you can be our trash hauler for 3 years or whatever, we might have an opportunity to do that. That's not what people are telling me we should do, but that would be a conversation that we would need to have, because we're going to hear about the single trash haulers for a long time to come if we don't start answering some of those questions.
What strikes me, having lived in some neighborhoods that have 2 of the trash haulers, there are Browns fans, there are Steelers fans, there's this trash hauler, that trash hauler, they have the t-shirts, they put the signs out front, it gets emotional. So, and there is, there are preferences. I mean, they actually are different. The way A&A trash will just take anything that's near close to the curb, and they make up the bill as they go along, and that's been my experience. So it's a give and take. I think it's going to be a very tough thing to legislate. I think that the city council may have the right to put in some restrictions, but I don't know the legalities around determining that for the entire city, this is your one single choice. Nor do I think that would be a wise expenditure of our efforts.
I do think it would be tough to legislate as well, but I think there's some good questions within the question, and that's why are people asking that question in the first place? What's displeasing them? And there's really 2 elements that I've heard when I hear displeasure with the options that we have, and it's the impact on the roads, because the roads are in some degraded condition. But in truth, I would link that back to a number of years ago when we cut the road budget in half, as opposed to the trash trucks directly. when you invest half the money in keeping your roads up, they're gonna deteriorate twice as fast. So I think that has been corrected, and now we're investing in the roads again, so we're starting to see improvement there. But you can see how someone might want to connect why the roads are going away with, you know, what's happening. So I think good to clarify that you invest less, you get less. Now, the second portion is, most people have expressed that they want choice. Now, does that mean that we give them one, or we give them four, or we give it a whole range? I think we could do an impact survey to see how many miles, how much impact is actually occurring on the roads, the noise, where are we seeing the challenges? So that you could, as Sarah mentioned, you could provide direction in the contract, you could limit areas, days, in a way that further reduce that. But I think looking at it without emotion and with a little bit of data and fact could tell you, by doing that, what is your gain? What are you getting in extending the life of the road or reducing the noise? Would you have to legislate or require a single trash hauler to make any impact? Because there is going to be overlap if there are four, but they're not all going to the same houses, so it's not 4 times the impact. So I think pulling it back to facts, data, and taking a look so that we can address the real issues behind the question is important. Thank you.
Well, going last, everybody's already said what I was gonna say, so.
I tried.
No.
Well, so
Everything before I get to her.
Chris talks to me, the engineer in me, you know, so when I'm posed with this question, the engineer in me says, yeah, we need a lot of data around this. I wanna understand, number one, why is this question even coming out? What is it that we're trying to get to? Yeah, what impact does this have, the current situation where we have, you know, numerous haulers going throughout town? I don't believe they are going to every single house, so as Chris said, it's not a full, you know, 4 times impact. It's you know, maybe 60%, 50%, I don't know. So again, the data in me, I would want to understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish, and then ultimately, what is it that residents want? Again, I've heard the same, you know, people really like their choice. You know, we do have a contract with a waste hauler in town, Republic, and I believe they have, I want to say it's 60% of the business, and then I think AA has another 30%, so we're already down to just pretty much 2 haulers in town. So yeah, what impact does it really have? And finally, I would want to, again, the other part or data part of me, I would want to see, you know, what do other communities do that are similar to us? How do they handle that? Because again, I like to see how other similar communities, you know, process information. What have they found that maybe we haven't explored yet? But ultimately, before we make any decisions, certainly talk to the residents and see what they want.
Thank you. Well, this one's not sealed. I promise I didn't look at it.
She toyed with it.
Study ahead of time.
What specific skills and experience do you have that will add value in infrastructure planning projects, such as phase 2? So we have had questions around skills. This one's a little bit more specific. What specific skills and experience do you have that will add value in infrastructure planning projects, such as phase 2?
So obviously with a background in architecture and planning and preservation, the whole visual of phase 2 is something that is going to be important to me, but I am not a person who's easily convinced by glittery pictures and the dog and pony show. When Fairmount Properties came up with their most recent proposal, I listened carefully to their presentation, and all I wanted to do was read the contract, because I'm not convinced that our land development code is going to allow them to do what they want to do without a lot of exceptions. And that's the first sticking point that I have. When it comes to infrastructure, I think looking specifically at the phase 2 area, we are not going to have a lot of issues, because we know from experience that many of the infrastructure developments have already happened in the downtown area. It's not difficult to run, for example, sanitary sewer another block as though it didn't already go over to Versailles, all right? What the issue is going to be is when we're looking to infrastructure develop to the rest of the community, and the rest of the community has been owed that infrastructure development for a long time. That's going to be the difficult question. So I do believe that people would like to see peace with the Phase 2 project. They're really hungry for this to no longer be a dividing point in our community. I am afraid that their hunger for peace is really going to cause us to settle for something that we will live with long beyond Fairmount's involvement with the property. So I want caution. I'm not afraid to take time. I want thoughtfulness and analysis, and I believe I bring that to this particular question. And I want to see some care so that the product we end up with is the asset that the city deserves it to be.
I'm an IT project manager. My development experience would be roughly 0. However, I am involved in a group called strongtowns.org, and they are a nonprofit group dedicated to sustainable, reasonable development. So I believe it was Aristotle who said, "I only know that I do not know." I am not an expert in this area, and unless you are an professional urban planner, you are not either. And I want to hire professional urban planners who will take our concerns as a community, craft solutions, present City Council with a limited number of solutions that support those areas, support those values, and then present those choices to the community. A limited number of choices that are not driven by a developer's desires, but instead driven by the desires of our community to either support our schools more robustly, support the cute downtown area, whatever our community really wants. Not what they want, blue shutters or red shutters, or they want a swimming pool or a driving range or whatever, the many things that they say they want to have developed. What do they value? And then let professionals who do it for a living determine how does that manifest itself, driven only by the desire to reflect what we appreciate.
Yeah, I would say, as a civil affairs officer and civil military operations planner, I have planned infrastructure in the past, but more than that, I think just the idea of project planning and due diligence, and that speaks to something that Sarah mentioned as well, which is that while I think we all want something developed in this space, it is a bit of a crown jewel. It's a unique resource that we have in the Phase 2 space. A developer is not going to develop without the hope of profit. So I think it's critical that we're able to balance the desire for profit and the long-term impact on our community. And I'll bring that down to just basic critical thinking and understanding without emotion the process we have to go through to approve it, what we're getting, and making it mutually beneficial in the end, so that yes, a developer needs profit, but yes, we own that long term. And we can't rush into something that's going to hang around our neck for almost eternity at this point before somebody redevelops it. So I think taking it through the process in a meaningful way and analyzing what we're hearing, again, no glitzy pictures, but truly, what are we committing to? What are we as a city committing to as the residents? And what is the developer committing to? Because at the end of the day, if it's not mutually beneficial, it's going to fail one way or the other, either with a dissatisfied town or a dissatisfied developer who's going to have to try to find some way to make ends meet. And I don't mean personally, I mean as a company. So we need that solution. And that's all that I'll say. Thanks.
So this question, when it talks about infrastructure, it's your first thought is, oh, you're talking about, like Sarah said, stormwater and basic engineering, civil structure, but that's not what we're talking about. I think it is more of understanding that long-term impact. So when Phase 2 was developed, 20 years ago, the intent was to develop that portion, that Phase 2 portion, within 5 years, and here it still sits today. And it's almost like we've been given a gift, because I fear that if we had rushed into it, I think we would have had more retail. I think, we wouldn't have the opportunity that we have right now, which is to put a lot of thought and forward-thinking vision into what we do put there. So when we talk about infrastructure, the landscape has changed over the last 20 years, and COVID has definitely changed things. So I think, what do I bring? And it's just that realization that we do need to be very thoughtful. We need to appreciate the gift we've been given, and understand what we can put there that will plan for that future success. The residences, small residences, whatever it is that, again, will sustain our current downtown, going forward. So that's all I have.
Well, I think the question asked experience on infrastructure and that on our individual basis here as we head towards our possible council seat. Personally, I don't know the nuts and bolts of infrastructure and sewers, but I personally have had the opportunity, with working with our staff, on our planning commission, and with the projects that came in front of us, as to how we've done what we've done thus far in our town. From our stormwater management programs, specifically how we put our land use development code together when it looked at stormwater and our responsibility for pervious and impervious surface. Now, right now downtown, we've got a lot of impervious surface, a lot of hardscape downtown, a lot of asphalt, which means a lot of runoff. One only needs to remember that 100-year flood scenario just a few years ago. And a lot of our infrastructure is really not prepared for that. Our climate is changing. And we've seen a lot of weather-related events that are going to impact us. And I look at our downtown, and I've looked at some of the plans that have come before, and I've looked specifically at the stormwater, and there's not a lot of space down there. Got a lot of area congested and compacted by the railroad that's there. So when I think about what we could do downtown, I think, and I mentioned about open space and an additional park, extension of our historic district as the anchor, really, of what downtown Phase 2 could be, with open space and so forth. But it's just the microcosm of the infrastructure of our community. We're all the infrastructure, and we've started projects all around this community that we need to finally finish up. We've got programs behind Terex and Art Finished, Joanne Fabrics. We've got a District 6 that's been opened up. We've got a YDC that sits unused that we can't go on. City owns it, we own it. If nothing more, let's put a path out there let us go out there and walk until you can figure out. But I think with Phase 2, let's put a brakes on it right now. Let's get this community together. Let's not bow to another developer's big plan. We have if it takes us another 10 years to finish this and figure this thing out the right way, it's not about the profit of a developer, it's about this community profiting for the first time. This is our land. Let's do it together. Thank you. That's my infrastructure.
Thank you.
Final envelope. Oh, I love this so much. Sorry. What is your favorite movie? Come on. This is a lot about someone.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh,
I guess I'll go first.
Yeah.
I can ask, I'll pick a random number 2 from one of these 5, but let's go ahead and do what's your favorite movie, because I love it.
Amadeus is my favorite movie. It's the story of Mozart, from a child as he grew through his relatively short life. Crazed genius. The soundtrack is unbelievable. If you ever have an opportunity, the Cleveland Orchestra sometimes will screen Amadeus and they will play the soundtrack, which is just absolutely awe-inspiring. And it's just a wacky movie about genius and how it can manifest itself in ways that are maddening to those who witness it and wish for those gifts. So that's my favorite movie.
Oh, wait. That is Spotify saying I need to listen to music.
I'll say that I go to movies for a distraction from real life, and Star Wars is probably, and if I have to pick one, I will, but I'll go generic. Star Wars, probably number 4, original, to be true. Yeah. So, and it's my favorite movie, I think, because of the themes that it represents. You know, good, evil, clarity, the struggle of the small against the large for the right reasons. It became a theme for us as a family when I've deployed. So my kids were just starting to get into Star Wars. It was just before the new series of Star Wars movies came out. So right before I left, they had the toys in the stores. Kids were young, so we could go buy the toys and play some games at the stores that they were doing. And then at Christmas, when I would be long gone, they would be able to open the toys and remember that and kind of put that theme in it. And I think ever since, it was probably, was that 2015? Ever since then, it's been a big thing for my kids. They remember it. They love Star Wars. We've seen every movie since for that reason, because it's a family bonding thing for us. So Star Wars, number 4 of all the movies. I'll go with the original.
Mine would have to be the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Total nerd. No, but you know, there's a number of things that help inspire me day to day, and music is one, and I find that the soundtrack from those movies, they're just really good. Renee Fleming is actually on it, and she's one of my most favorite, you know, singers of all time. But there's also just some really excellent quotes, life quotes that come out of those movies that, you know, I take with me, and they are inspirational as I go about, you know, my day-to-day tasks, or when I have something that happens. You know, I think back to those movies. So, Lord of the Rings.
It's going to be one that maybe you folks won't remember, but it goes back to the days of Kukla, Fran, and Ollie for me. And I still watch this movie today. If you remember the movie called Tiki and the Shark. And I think the reason that it made such an impact on me, because it broke down those barriers that we put in our lives, the way we have our interpersonal relationships with each other, the way we meet strangers on the street. Because I think what we've lost today in our world is the convenience of our irresponsible world of communication. All, whether you're left-handed or whether you're right-handed. We live a lot here, but we don't live a lot this way. We don't do this anymore, whether we're on the streets or whether we're at a meeting. And I think that movie, to me, put that in me at a very early age. And I guess that's how my mother was part of the American Friends Service Committee. She marched against the Vietnam War. She took my sister's Miss Beasley doll and turned it into an anti-war protest. So my experiences have been very much the face-to-face. And so in that movie, the premise was that Tiki, unbeknownst to all the villagers, befriended a shark, but all the villagers hunted the shark, and they treated him as an enemy. And by Tiki's actions, it changed the whole vision of the village.
So, what's interesting is I was thinking about this because I should know what my favorite movie is, right? and it's a tie for me, but here's what's common between the two of them. In real life, I really hate plot twists. I'm a planner, and when Mama makes a plan, we are going to do what Mama said, unless the plan is to roll with it, and I have to be told the plan is to roll with it. So for the plot twists, I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off, because life comes at you pretty fast. And the story about a senior in high school, you know, having a great day with his friends, and of course, I've seen all of this is impossible because the wrong day for the baseball game and the Cubs weren't in town that day. I love watching all of those. I love rewatching the movie to look for the blips and the gaffes and the bloopers in them. And so I love that. But cinematographically, it does not bring it the way that Pirates of the Caribbean, the original one. I haven't even watched the others, because after that, what could be more perfect? So plot twists are my thing. Pirates of the Caribbean for the beautiful movie that it is, but Ferris Bueller, if I had to watch it for the rest of my life, that'd be the one that I did.
All right, we're gonna do bonus question.
Oh, I got that on the playlist.
Pick one of these 5, sir. That's the one I picked just because it was on notebook paper. Oh, you gotta end it on this one, huh? When is Hudson big enough?
Oh, that is a hard question.
Yes, so, to open, it's always big enough for what it is, but that's kind of a philosophical response. I think that it's driven by the interests and the needs of the people in the community. So as we look at what we want, I mean, the land space isn't growing. Density is all that changes the more you put on top of what we have. So it comes down to what's acceptable to the residents and what's sustainable as a city. I think, you know, to my personal mind, I love green space. The more, the better. But I also know I can't afford to buy as much green space as I would enjoy. So I have to live in the reality of the constraints between. And I think as a city, we're very much in that same place. I've heard suggestions that we do like a solar farm. I've heard, you know, many different suggestions for our open space. And some of them, while they're great ideas, they just don't fit with the resource limitations that we have. So I think I'll link it back to we're big enough when we look at the comprehensive development plan and we pace it in a way that answers the needs and the interests of the residents in a way that, you know, not everyone is always happy, but if we have broad support, and I think we've mentioned organic growth, there will be new things that we want to add. How do we do it responsibly? So I think it's a pace, not a place, right? It's how we do it, not ending it at one point in time or another. And that's all I've got. Sorry.
That's an interesting question, and I don't think there's a right answer. I think it's you know how we feel. I mean, we think back to when we first moved here, and when I first moved here in '71, I think it was the village and the township, and the village was about 2,200 people, and the township, I'm not sure when you added that in, it might have been another 10, maybe 10,000, but you know it felt perfect. And you know we've evolved since then. We're at what, about 22,000, 23,000 people, and it doesn't come down to numbers. It comes down to feel. You know, we could be a town of 50,000, and as long as we're united and you know we have that. You know, we're meeting the needs that we all want, which is the park space, the green space. You know, we've got the infrastructure, we've got the services to be able to handle it. You know, as long as we feel united as a community, I don't think size matters. So, you know, I think it does come down to developing that proper comprehensive plan. Our current comprehensive plan is over 5 years old. It's supposed to be updated every 5 years. And I think it really does need a rework of that vision so that we all kind of have that united forward-thinking concept in mind where we have different allocations of how we want to use the space that we have available. And from there, it comes down to then developing the zoning codes to address how do we make sure we meet that roadmap in the way that we want to grow. And I think organic growth is key. Not forced, so.
Well, we've all lived in Hudson for quite some time, and we've all seen this community take itself to where we are here in 2021. We know what open space is left in town, we know what open space is not left in town. One only has to go up into a balloon just a little high to see what's left in Hudson to develop. We've got a core that sits downtown between our South 91 corridor from 303 to Barlow Road. We've got a phase 2 area that we look at and we're going to have a community conversation about. We've got space out towards the western portion of our community, towards District 6 and the YDC property, the property that's owned by the Metro Parks that's out on Hines Hill Road. Beyond that, there's not a lot left in Hudson when it comes to the space in our town. But yet, we continually, every year, continue with this conversation about economic development. And the question begs, when are we economically developed in this town? When are we big enough? When are we going to be satisfied with who we are and stop homogenizing ourselves like everybody around us? There's nothing unique if we keep going the way we are. And that is the true honest of what we have facing us right now. We can glitz it up and we can talk about the impacts and such wonderful, it's our town. And once it's gone, it's gone. And I just beg the question for all of us to ask each other, go home and ask your neighbors this one. I'll continue to ask everybody that I go to door with. When are we big enough? Because at this point right now, we've got a school system that is wonderfully adequate for the size of our community. We've got a quaintness that exists downtown in our historic district that we have a wonderful opportunity to extend into what we're looking at in phase 2 of downtown. But beyond that, what more do we need? Do we need more empty office spaces in this town? Spec office buildings that still sit? We develop the areas to develop, but we're never satisfied with those spots rather. We're always on to the next ones. We've got districts that we specifically set aside to do development in, and we go the other way. Let's finish the projects that are on our plates. Thank you.
So in summary, and I'm going to break it down after I summarize for you, I believe we've already reached the point. And let me tell you why I think Hudson has reached that big enough point. We have been able to keep a very high housing value. We managed to do that through the 2008 real estate crisis. We've managed to do that through some very tumultuous times related to the pandemic. Let me tell you about an unstable housing market in Cuyahoga County. Let me tell you about people being taxed out of their houses in that community because they owned their house already. They didn't have a mortgage foreclosure come through in 2008, but the tax burden has been so instant and so great on them that people are losing their houses there. So what I'm looking at Hudson-wise is we're in actually really great shape. Why would we want to change this? You know, Hudson started out as a farming community by some New England farmers who came out here 200 years ago, just like Twinsburg and just like Streetsboro. But how is it that we're so different from those two cities? It's because we protected what we had through the times of unbelievable development that those other communities became the victims of. And I use that word very specifically. They became the victims of it. We are foolish if we think that the only kind of economic development that we can prove is worthy is the new construction part. We have an aging housing stock in Hudson that we need to turn attention to. We need to make sure that the development that does happen is long-term sustainable, not just short-term gain sustainable. And how do I know that we've reached this? We have 4 retirement or nursing centers in Hudson. We have Laurel Lake, the Danbury, the Grand, and the Hudson Meadows. Hudson Meadows is at 13% occupancy. We have clearly built enough.
I've lived in Hudson since 1965. You don't have to do the math on that. I was young when I got here. But I have witnessed the change in the evolution. I think it has been blissfully well managed. We are not Stowe, right? We have not become Streetsboro and Twinsburg and Stowe and the surrounding communities who started off much like we did. And for the folks who allowed that to be controlled are to be commended, and we are in their debt. I'm back to my drum beating of suggesting that certainly at this time we need to cull from the community the statement of their values in a very specific, clear, weighted way, and we need to use those guideposts as our direction going forward. If the majority of the community thinks Solon and its main drag is really great, well then have at it and I'll find another place to live. But if we don't, then we need to articulate why that is, where's that at? And it's not going to be tomorrow. It's not a question of what do you want built. It's a question of what do you really value about this place. It's a thoughtful exercise. But once that becomes our guidepost, we put that into the code, we put that into the comprehensive plan, and that's what's on the first page. And every page needs to refer back to what are those values. Not that I made up, and not that we made up, but that you articulated to people who were listening, who were really interested to understand what you all collectively meant. that when we ask that question, there won't be 100 answers. There will be a limited number of answers, and we can really leverage that to drive our actions forward.
All right.
Thank you.
That is it. Thank you so much. We're gonna, great, appreciate it. By all means, we get kicked out of here at 9, I believe, so we got a little bit, we do have to put the chairs away, but you can mingle a little bit while we stack chairs and ask any questions you want to any of
Thank you
them.
all for
Thanks for
coming.
coming, appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank